The topic is Advancing Human Capital Development on Emerging Critical Industries. Kindly, with all respect, kindly I'm welcoming Fu Kiang Chong, the Senior Social Sector Specialist, Skill Development, South Asia Department, Asian Development Bank. Welcome to the dais. Thank you. Here the session begins.
Asian Development Bank, ADB. I think most of you know ADB, so I'm not going to go into what ADB does. So technically speaking, I only have time perhaps for one slide, which is this slide, but there are a lot of information in the whole PowerPoint presentation, which I have already shared with the organizer. So I'm sure the organizer will share with the rest of the participants. So I'll just start on the right-hand side, on my right-hand side, yeah? I'm seeing at the screen is directly opposite. Industry 4.0, right? I think that was something that was mooted way back in 2015, 2016, right? Because of the advance in manufacturing technology, particularly, IIoT, smart manufacturing, robotic, autonomous manufacturing system. And back then, 2018, 2019, there was so many publications that talks about job losses because of Industry 4.0 technologies. But then fast forward, nobody talk about job losses because of Industry 4.0 technology anymore, right? The other thing is, has Industry 4.0 disappeared? Not at all. It is being implemented in all the major MNCs that do manufacturing. They are all implementing I 4.0 embedded into their system, right? Everything is digitalized. Data is there, very efficient, right? But the small, medium enterprises, those that aim to get into the global supply chain or the supply chain of the bigger, manufacturing companies, they are the one that is struggling because they don't have the financing to just buy new equipment that is I 4.0 enabled, right? So that is where I think there's a lot of opportunities for institutions to develop training program so that students, when they graduate, they are able to help companies to integrate their machine, digitalize it, especially the legacy machine, so that small, medium enterprises do not need to borrow, a hefty sum of money from the banks, right? Because that will break their business. And fast forward, now we are in 2025. What is happening is, I don't know how many of you heard about industrial AI. So what is industrial AI, right? In the day-to-day AI that we use, that is based on a large language model, it's text-based, right? When we talk about industrial AI, we are talking about data set, numbers, figures coming from the production shop floor. And that is only possible because your machines are smart. You are able to collect data, right? So that's how it's sort of a metaphor from smart manufacturing, from Industry 4.0, with all this automation, data collection, it goes into industrial AI. So industrial AI, you see here, on my right-hand side, green color, it's quite a new field because you need to collect data, right? And you need to model it, and a lot of companies don't share data across different, among their competitors, right? Then you will not have the competitive advantage. Right, on the middle, AI, artificial intelligence, right? I think way back in 2022, I think ChatGPT was released. So, and since then, it has gotten much better and better. Now we are talking about 5.0, yeah? And it's very accurate, you can do a lot of wonder with that. Now the big question is, how is it going to impact jobs, right? Just I think end of July, there was a report released by Microsoft about the impact of AI on jobs. So there are many entry-level jobs, knowledge-based job that will be affected by AI, right? Even myself, I don't really do any programming. Just last week, I tried out something called vibe coding. I don't know whether you're familiar with vibe coding. If you have not, just Google it, try it. It's really interesting. Disappear. Tech support. Is it time to go for lunch? Okay, it's not, right? So vibe coding, try it. But most of the apps, you have to pay for it in order to use vibe coding. And I could actually do something, I could actually create an AI version of me on specific knowledge, be it in semiconductor, be it in quantum, be it in space tech, right? And it only take me like maybe half a day to come up with something. It's based on natural language, so it's based on how you prompt, the apps. And then it will create everything for you. It will show you all the source code. It will do auto-correction. Really exciting. But exciting is one thing, if you were to try it, don't keep on paying, because you have to pay, to use the apps, to create the apps that you want, right? So what it means is that at my fingertips, I could actually say that I have a team of program developers, programmers, software developers, working for me now to create whatever I want to streamline in my course of work. And that is because of AI. So what is the implication for Karela? You have to think about it, Karela, I think in the morning, the presentation talked about how many hundreds of thousands of jobs from the IT parks, right? Most of them are software developers, programmers. So would that still continue to be the main job provider? Something you need to ask about it, right? I'll stop there on AI. And of course, because of AI essentially needs a lot of computation power, right? The more advanced AI is, the more computation power you need, and the more data server you need, right? So that leads to the need for semiconductor, as well as big data center. I'll talk about semiconductor first because this is really exciting. Way back in 2017 and 2018, I was based in New Delhi. So I was doing some research on manufacturing sector. And I was checking around in India, a country of 1.4 billion population, way back in 2017, there isn't really a semiconductor manufacturing plant. India did not produce any chips at all. That was a total surprise for me, right? There was only one. That is for defense purpose. I think it's run by the defense industry, right? Or the defense ministry. That was only one. But fast forward, now we are in 2025. I think if you have been following the news last year, there were a lot of announcements, even up to last week. There was still all this announcement of semiconductor plant setting up, and semiconductor industry comprises of three main pieces, right? We don't talk about the minerals. Leave the minerals aside, right? You have the design of chips, which surprisingly many Indian colleges, university, actually run VLSI course or training program in your EEE, your electrical electronics engineering program, right? But then the middle stream, chip manufacturing, that is hardly any colleges really offering that because the investment of facility is huge. And then there's a downstream that is called the ATP, assembly, testing, and packaging, and OSAT, OSAT, outsourced semiconductor assembly and testing is also part of that downstream. So we are talking about three mainstream of semiconductor. And till last week there was an announcement in India about 2 semiconductor plants setting up in Odisha, right? And of course, before that, you have in Gujarat, Tata is setting up this plant there, Micron is setting up a plant there, and in other part of India as well. Right, so that's the most exciting. If you want to do anything on AI, you definitely need advanced chips. But besides chips, what else is needed? Right? Particularly for AI, you need memory chips, but you also need your data server. Come on. Yes. Let me just go back. Go back. Yeah. So big data, data center is really important, right? But then, of course, it consumes a lot of power as well, right? And so where does that lead to? That leads to renewable energy. Of course, India has a lot of coal. You can, technically speaking, use coal to supply, the energy that's needed to run the data center, to the cooling particularly, right? But then, India is also a signatory to COP, right? And it's also about climate, So that is something, to really look into, in the near future. The transitioning from fossil fuel, basically coal, into renewable energy. And in renewable energy, you have many different fields, right? You have, of course, solar, you have wind, and then you also need, and also hydrogen. I've been hearing about green hydrogen quite a lot in India, right? It's one thing to be able to generate, green hydrogen through your renewable energy, be it solar or wind. But it's another matter, on how to transport it, right? You can't just transport green hydrogen easily with the existing infrastructure. So that is something, to be worked out in the near future, hopefully. And of course, stability of grid, and also generation during peak, right? When you have strong wind, you have good sun, and you cannot use it at the place where you generate it. Your transmission line, somehow is not connected, or you just simply cannot use it during the high generation. You can have the energy storage system, and the battery energy storage system is something that I think India is also looking into it right now, right? But it's still at the nascent stage in terms of the investment in this area. But what India is doing well is in PV cell manufacturing. That is already companies already started with that, right? So all these are the available jobs, right, within the new emerging industry. And if you look, quantum, where is quantum? Quantum technology is there as well. By the way, India also has a quantum mission, right, at a national level. But a month ago, I was in Bangalore. There was a big event, called the Quantum Roadmap. So there was a round table, and the roadmap was shared with us, so it provides some feedback. So that is something I think quite kind of interesting as well for India, because India is trying to create that ecosystem, right, to create companies that can get into the quantum supply chain in the future. And I think India is not far off from the leading countries doing quantum. So together, all these present new opportunities, which I think Kerala as a state, you should look really critically and see where you can really fit in, right? Particularly, I fear, the next generation at AI, or the next breakthrough application for AI may result in the less opening for software developers and programmers, right? So how do we address that? And where, in terms of manufacturing, could Kerala actually come in easily or transition? Something to think about. Because we have been hearing so much from many people from Kerala saying that Kerala is a small state, it doesn't have big space, so going into big manufacturing is not possible. But I sort of would disagree with that. I come from Singapore. Singapore is a powerhouse in semiconductor manufacturing. It has the entire ecosystem, right? From, not only just, from design to chip manufacturing to downstream ATP. but it's also making equipment to make semiconductor, right? Or the etching machine, lithography machine, and all those. So why Karela can't do it, right? Something to think about. Let me see how much time I have. Okay, maybe I'll do another 5-10 minutes. So the next slide, let's see. I give some example of semiconductor, right? So this one sort of, capture in a nutshell the entire value chain of a semiconductor, right? So for the state of Karela, I think you could really examine it and see where makes sense. But of course, you cannot just do everything. It's very hard for a single country to do everything, right? Especially you want to start off. So maybe Karela has been very good with software, development. Perhaps chip design is something that Karela could really focus. There's a lot of semiconductor company that are called fabless, meaning they don't have their own plant to produce the chips, but they actually do the advanced design, 3 nanometer, 2.5 nanometer, whatever, right? And then the downstream using chips, particularly India-produced chips, to make very customized products. I think that could be one area Karela could focus at, particularly high-value electronics products, right? So that is one opportunity for Karela as well. This one is the entire value chain from R&D. If you look at R&D, could Karela do R&D? You bring in the right expertise. Pick 2-3 good universities in Karela, right? Focus on an R&D. That is like 15-20% of the industry value, right? And then you have the design, which I talked about just now. Wafer fabrication, perhaps Karela is not interested, but I think it's a missed opportunity. I love chips manufacturing, by the way. 30 years ago, my internship when I was in universities, I actually did an internship with a company called Chartered Semiconductor, and which is now non-existent because it has been bought over by Global Foundries. But that sort of opened up my knowledge about semiconductor, right? And I'm a business grad. I did my Bachelor of Business, not in engineering, but I work in the fab because of that internship opportunity, right? ATP, assembly, testing, packaging. That is the downstream of semiconductor manufacturing, right? And then, of course, you have below, you have the electronics design automation that is on design of chips, and then wafer processing and testing equipment, material. All these make up 100%. So you can see where the value are, right? And then, of course, on the left-hand side, right? Electronics product, which I talked about just now, it is used in automotive, right? It is used in all your phone, iPhone. Most advanced chips is used in iPhone. And then, your power chips, used in so many areas, transmission and so on and so forth. And of course, aeronautical, aerospace. Almost everything you need to use chips. So these are some of the application of chips. Something to think about. Can Karela, focus on something here? And there is manufacturing. I think manufacturing job is really sexy. These are some of the chip manufacturing company announced in the news. Some started their production. Yeah, it's a little bit small. I'm not going to go into detail. These are more. This is ATP. Before that was the chip manufacturing. Estimated job known, announced. I think it's about 128,000. But I think it'll be much, much more than that, 10 times, 20 times more than that. Philippines, a country that has a steep tradition in semiconductor, only focusing on a little bit on design and then a lot on ATP, assembly, testing, packaging. They hire almost 3 million workers in the industry, and their major, high-value export is actually semiconductor, right? That is the Philippines. So 3 million, people working in the industry. I think India can do, many times that, maybe 10 times of that, I hope. So these are the job roles available for semiconductor industry. I'm not going to go into detail here. More, a lot of jobs. And then, for those who are from the universities, colleges, institutions, some of the core skill competency for both technician and engineers, sort of stated down here. This is the entry, level, jobs. I'm not going to go into detail. I'll leave the slide with the organizer. Quantum. Quantum is very exciting, something new, right? Why quantum, just briefly explain. The current semiconductor, I talk about computation power, right? The current semiconductor technology, those who understand Moore's law, right? Chips, the number of chips, transistor, you can pack into that smaller chips, has its limitation, right? I think it has almost meet its limitation now. That's why quantum comes in, because you need, greater computation power, right? So, but it's still very new industry. It might disappear completely. I hope not. See, these are all the companies actually now in India. Many of them are startup. And I think India's strategy is to incubate, some of these company, particularly startup company in quantum, and become part of the supply chain in the future. And that is a great strategy. So is Karela looking at that? I don't know. Yeah, perhaps somebody from Karela can tell me later. And these are the quantum skills associated jobs currently. It's very, very nascent, but currently, we don't really even have a quantum computer yet, right? But there's a way to sort of do the programming, right? Using programming to mimic quantum technology. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.